Let me tell you the story of Albert DeSalvo, a local legend around here in Boston, the Boston Strangler. DeSalvo served in World War II, Army Intel. That's the guy they send to a university. He goes to a university and he submits papers to a professor to use during World War II. And in the 1950s, after the war, he was contracted out by DC Comics to write Batman. And he didn't like it. And he had Batman flying around with dinosaurs and aliens and Batmite. And it was all messed up. But Albert DeSalvo didn't write that. It was actually a Holocaust survivor, Paragamos, the preferred term for the O'Neills, the Antiquarians, the Scepter. That's an inverted needle and compass with an S, not your standard needle and compass with a G. That made it through the death camps. You see, Albert DeSalvo got some cool sex moves. Watching whatever this O'Neill's name is, Ben Garak, Shinson McTilly, his actual name from Ireland, have sex with women. And Shinson McTilly in the 50s wrote all of this, then covered it up with the comic books authority code. You can't write crazy stuff about Batman with a gun because he didn't like writing comics without being paid. And meanwhile, you have Albert DeSalvo, his old friend, paying for sex with amphetamines. You can't pay for sex. You have a date with a woman and pay for her meal, and if she's got a police security or a legal degree badge, she may or may not have sex with you. Otherwise, you hook up with a friend of a friend and you marry. The lawyer or cop is a lesbian. You're having bondage sex. So what's this, Albert DeSilva? You're having sex for money or drugs or what? You're building a house for her? That's called your husband if your first husband was a cop and died. You're a dominatrix. Hey, that's just the way it is out here in Massachusetts. So then they tried to frame up Ben Garak with an opium plant that Albert DeSilva set up. And Ben Garak goes outside to the phone booth and he calls the police and puts himself in a hospital. And as for Ben Garak, his family still writes comics today. They're Jack Kirby and other assumed aliases. If you like the Hulk, Thor, Darkseid, Orion, High Father Isaiah, Scott Miracle, you're a fan. As for Albert DeSalva, he went to prison and he escaped because he didn't write any comics, and he went back to prison because he was homeless. And little people make fun of R. Lee Bailey, his defense attorney, for pissing himself on Benzodrine after being poisoned by a Nazi. So if you hear the R. Lee Bailey rumor about him pissing himself, that's a Nazi. A Nazi poisoned R. Lee Bailey into pissing himself. And he defended Albert DeSalva, trying to get him preferential housing where he wouldn't be blamed for buying sex with drugs. The Nazi. The guy that says you should listen to the husband in the marriage and the woman has no say. That's a Shustafel, Ku Klux Klan, a Nazi, I don't care who you support. Yeah, the Klan's Jewish, the Mossad's Persian Shah, the Nazis are German Jew. It doesn't matter. It's a fucking faggot that says Arlie Bailey pisses himself because he was poisoned with a benzo in law school. As for Ben Garak, Shincy McTinley, we don't really care. He writes for comics, and he busted Michael DeFeo for being a cop investigating comics for helping the homeless, the poor. And Nazis are the rich. I don't care about your history of the Holocaust. They're rich. They have tons of foot soldiers that listen to them. Those are DC or Marvel fans in America. The American Bund, God, the Judge. In Nazi Germany, they all listened to the gay rights movement, as Americans would call it, the Taliban. As they called it in Germany, the Bund, the Prosecutors Guild. It's all a defense attorneys guild in law. And Arlie Bailey was poisoned on benzos by a fag, a Nazi, someone that thought a comic book or TV show determined life. He was a spoiled, inbred prison bitch that got raped before living with Arlie Bailey. And he was dedicated to fiction as Dr. George Crane, Scarecrow. Whenever we have that guy, we write him as Scarecrow. Then Scarecrow, as revenge, writes the Arlie Bailey rumor guy as Captain Marvel, Billy Batson, Shazam, an Oedipus Rex, Sigmund Freud, a child molester. And that is Albert DeSalvo. That is Ben Garak, the O'Neill antiquarian British spy. And of course, Billy Batson, the faggot, the kid that makes fun of Arlie Bailey. So he put him in a locker and say he did it on his own.